one thing, John, I was going to ask you. You recall youth ministry in your earliest days, and as it developed through the years, you see how people approach it today. What do you see as some of the most significant differences, if you were to sum up 2 or 3?
I would say the most significant differences of youth ministry from the early days until today. One would be the respect that elders have for these situations. Now, I've talked to a lot of elders, and I didn't even ask them, and boy, they would express their feeling about this thing. One elder told me not long ago, he said, "I don't know one youth minister who's worth his soap." And I thought, oh no, you know. Now, I grant you that he probably just had acquaintance with 1 or 2 or 5. You understand what I mean? So you take some of that with a grain of salt. You know what I'm saying? But the elders I've talked to, the young men have not gained trust with elders. I don't know whether that means anything, but that young man, when he comes to an eldership, he needs to be biblical. They need to be able to ask him any question, you know, and he may not know all the answers, but at least they have to see that he is a Bible-searching type of person, and that's going to be the area. So I've seen a number of young men who didn't want to go through the trust process. They just wanted to be considered a professional person to begin with, and they just wanted, because they wanted to have that position, they wanted everybody to respect them for that. And it doesn't always work that way, and a lot of them don't understand that, you know. Even though it's not a total difference, I'd like to see youth ministers go out and even in their degree plans, spend more time in a church. The reason I say that is, as you know, people who've been in the youth ministry, if they get an intern in there, they can keep him from making about 1,000 mistakes if he's a good listener, you know. And I think they need a lot more of that just to keep them from making a lot of the mistakes that I made, you know, and that kind of thing. And so that difference is great. The third thing that I've missed in a lot of the young youth ministers right now, those of us who are young early, we had to learn to listen. But I've dealt with a lot of them who they're not too intent on listening. Now, I realize that's part of their culture. I'm very aware of that today. But learning to listen to people. In fact, my maintenance is that every new youth minister ought to go to every single kid's home and just listen. You know what I mean? They ought to see him in his natural habitat, see his parents, and just listen to his parents talk and listen to him talk instead of him being the talker. You know, you need to learn to be a listener. I think we were a little bit better listeners back then, mainly because we didn't know what day it was. You know, we had to start somewhere. You know, but those are some of the things that I see right now.
Who are some of the people that were key in your life? Key influence in your youth ministry, and but maybe even beyond that?
Well, interesting enough, when I was born here, as I said, in Cyril, Oklahoma, we're talking about the key influences in my life. My dad was not a Christian, and my mother was. And there was a little wooden church building that sat right where this building sits, where we are taping this today. One of the men was Brother Ben Taylor, who worked for the Frisco Railroad. And another one was Dick Biggs. He was a carpenter. And we had about 40 people, maybe, on a good day, you know. But Brother Ben, when I was a little boy, he got me up leading singing when I was about 4. And I didn't know whether the book was right side up or upside down, or I didn't know, but he'd just put me up at the front. And Brother Ben would start the song, and he'd beat on the floor with his foot to keep the time. He'd beat on the book with a pencil to keep the time. He actually led the song, but because I was up the front, I thought I was leading it. I didn't know, you know. But he would come out of the church building when I was a little kid, and sometimes he'd hand me a Bible tract. Cost 10 cents back then. He had bought it with his money, and he'd hand it to me and say, "Don, I want you to preach the gospel someday." He did that a number of times. One time when I was a teenager, one day he walked out and handed me the old Oliphant Rice Debate, paperback book, corner rolled up, torn off of one corner. He had written in the front of it to Don Williams with some scripture from Revelation, signed his name, said, "I want you to preach the gospel." And he said, "Someday I want you to hand this to a young man that you want to preach." Well, I now have about 7,000 religious books in my own personal library. But next to my Bible, that's the most precious book I have. And I've had a hard time turning loose of that because it was one of the biggest encouragements I ever had to preach. I can't tell you whether the Oliphant Rice Debate was any good or not, but that book and what it meant as a gift from him was just a precious treasure. In fact, his son, who is an elder in the church in Austin, knocked on my door last week and spent an hour with me. And that was a tremendous influence to be in a little church where just the members encouraged you, Then probably the two greatest teachers I ever had were Dr. Frank Pack and Dr. Neil Lightfoot at Abilene Christian. They were just fantastic teachers. I had other great teachers, but boy, they were great influences. And then in all the years at congregations, I've had some great elders. Had some bad ones too, but I've had some just tremendously godly elders who they didn't feel like they were brilliant, but you knew that their purpose was to glorify God. And boy, you go back and you look at those kind of people and you love them. Boy, just great influences. Of course, then, by the way, my dad became a Christian. At first he fell away from the Lord, and then he came back. And in his last 30 years, he was just couldn't have been stronger. Taught a Bible class and led singing and did everything. And so I would never put any of those other people before Mother and Dad, because my mother read her Bible every night of the world, and I saw that as a little boy, kind of thing. So Mother and Dad's influence would be really at the top of the list on that. By the way, I could not leave out a lot of these youth ministers who've just been unbelievable people in my life. Wally Wilkerson, Tim Lewis, these kind of people. Just great people, caring, loving. But those are some of the biggest influences.
Appreciate that. Now you're in a position more and more so you had through the years. If you had to boil it down and give some piece of advice, direction, guidance to youth ministers today,
okay,
what would it be?
Probably the first thing I would do is I'd say, when you go to college, you get all of the training you can in the field of youth ministry, all they have. But every class you can take otherwise, you take it in the biblical text. Because I want youth ministers to take classes in how to run camps and how to and physical education and all of this kind of thing, because you do a lot of that thing. But I want them to. But every class I could take that outside of my major, I took it in the biblical text, and I wouldn't trade that for a thing in the world, because the number one responsibility you have is to be a supplement, not the primary one, but a supplement to the mother and dad for teaching this kid God's Word. That's the thing that has to do. So I'd say you take all the Bible you can. The second thing I would say is that you have to do is you have to have your own personal quiet time every single day with God. No, there's no way around it. That's just, you can say all you want to. I don't care if you do 117 other things. You have to have your own personal quiet time with God, both your meditation, your prayer, and your Bible study of your own, because you have to listen to God first. So that's a crucial one. I would say, thirdly, train yourself to be as I said a while ago, a listener. Learn all you can. Be a wise. Well, add that number 4. Be a wise person. I don't think anything is more important in youth ministry outside of your Bible study than having good common horse sense. Man, I've dealt with some guys and I said, where in the world is your head? I mean, I spoke at the Dallas summer series. I've spoken there a jillion times, but the week before I spoke, some old boy who was speaking, he got up in the pulpit and then there were the jams, took his jams off of the pulpit and threw them out in the audience, and and of course I was fit to I about died, but boy, just good old common horse sense is just one of the most crucial things in the world. There's some things you can't do with girls, period, Oh, well, I don't need to say any more on that, but in a practical way, I'd say that. Then I'd say number 5, learn from everyone you can learn from. Read every book you can read. If it's no good, cast it off, read another one, Talk to people who've done it. You know what I'm saying? Just learn from everyone you can learn from. Well, that'll be a start, maybe.
That's great. This may be backtracking a little bit, but so I may not want to go a long distance here, but things that sometimes we major in minors and minor in majors. Sometimes we don't know that until looking back. Any of those that you now looking back think, if I would have had to do over again, probably wouldn't have spent as much time pushing this. Right. It would have been more with this. Right. Vice versa.
Well, one to think about on that is, I'm afraid we've spent too much time on whether a person's single or married in this thing. And I know there's some churches that will not hire a single man. But the point is, from the beginning, I decided that was not the crucial issue, and I was not going to let it be. And I decided to start with that I was going to pray to God and say, God, if I'm single, I'll be used of you, and if I'm married, I'll be used of you, and I will never let the situation decide that. And so I wasn't concerned. If a church didn't want me, I said, oh, you wouldn't have Paul or Jesus either. So and I just went on, But I think that's a crucial thing. By the way, I think marriage is one of the most fantastic, beautiful things that it can be in the world. But I think there are pluses and minuses on both sides of the fence. So when I look back now about things that I would give less time to or more time, I would again start out and say, that is not the issue. You can do unbelievable work, whichever way you find yourself in that thing. If I were to go back now and start again, I would spend more time in my Bible. What I mean by that is, once I did a job description at Lubbock, and as I said, I had 30 programs running at the same time. I discovered that I was not spending enough time in the Word. Now, you may say, well, I won't have time to take so-and-so to here or whatever. Well, tough luck, that kind of thing. But I definitely would spend more time in the Word. The third thing I would do if I started again was, as I said, I would spend less time with those who already have it together, and I would spend more time with the ones in the middle and the ones who, quote, really need me more. It's not as much fun. Some of them have more difficulties, but I would do that more, I think, if I went back. I would also definitely spend more time with mothers and dads trying to train them. Now, maybe I should explain that. I didn't discover this till about 20 years ago, but Gary, I'm convinced that if I started back again, I'd do something I've never done, and that is I would set up a letter or a thing I sent to dads every week of how they do a devotion and teach the Bible in their home to their kids. I think I'd do that. The Grace Community Church out in California did that every week, and it just moved me the way they did that. They even did fun things and all that a family could do together, but I would help dads more have the responsibility they need to have on that. Now, a lot of youth ministers won't like this one, but I would try to get us at times to not have Sunday morning Bible class. That's going to sound funny. I think we need to encourage all of... See, what happened is 100 years ago, Sunday school started, Bible school started in a lot of different religious groups. Well, I think we've misused Bible class. We've made, as I said, made it dependent upon teaching our kids the Bible. What would happen if all of our kids on Sunday morning, those who have Christian mother and father, stayed home and Dad taught the Sunday school lesson to his family? I think it would be a transition. I'm only for Bible class if for the kids who don't have Christian parents and need that training. But I think it would make a transition like we've never had before if dads would teach the Bible to their kids and do the devotions and that kind of thing. I would definitely do that if I started again, I think.
Appreciate that. Getting ready to wrap up here in just a couple more here. One is, anything embarrassing that you'd like to mention about the past? Embarrassing moments, things, funny, silly, whatever.
There are a million of those. Probably the classic one. I've had more than you can count, but after I moved to California, I came back to Lubbock and spoke for their junior senior banquets there. And Carl Cope was the youth minister, and Carl said, Don, we're going to have it a Hawaiian theme, And I said, why? I've just been to Hawaii to speak. And so I said, that'll be easy enough, So I came back and I had my lesson developed really well, but if there's ever a word which can have a double meaning, the teenage boys, and sometimes you think, what in the world did I say, But my first point in my lesson was, one of the great things about going to Hawaii was, as soon as you get off the plane, you get a lei. And I mean the teenage boys. And the trouble is, I didn't even know what I'd said. See? And then at the end, Carl came back and said, Don, you not only said it the first time, but every time you made another point, you went over the first point again, But it is so difficult when you do something and you don't know what you've done. And these kids are dying laughing, there's some that I probably can't tell here, but oh yeah, and of course one of my problems in that, Gary, is that I'm a person. If something's funny to me, if I'm out somewhere, if something's funny to me, I just die laughing, whether anyone else does or not, And I was at a youth rally in Bakersfield, California, and this young kid was speaking, and he was doing such a great job. He's just doing a marvelous job. But he used an old illustration about his old pickup. I said, my old pickup is just a bunch of nuts and bolts, is all it was. And he used a good illustration about it. And right at the end, he came back and he said, my old pickup, it was just a bunch of butts and notes. That's all it was. And, man, I'm on the front row, and I just hee-hawed. No one else in the audience laughed except me, And but if something's funny to me, I just want to enjoy it, there are a couple I'd like to tell, but this tape will be used a lot of places, But oh yeah, all of us have done dumb things, but I get. By the way, that's the greatness of getting with a lot of youth ministers. You don't have to make up stories. You've done enough dumb things to mess it up. But
Well, Don, what's God doing with you now these days?
okay. What's God doing with me now? A year and a half ago, I retired from Abilene Christian at age 65, and I moved back here because my mother was in a nursing home. And I had prayed to God for a long time. I'd been coming for every weekend I could for 4 years. I'd drive here every weekend to be with her. So I prayed to God that He would let me be with Mother. And so He did. And once I retired, I was able to move back here into the house that we moved into when I was 4 years old. And I got to be with my mother every day at the nursing home. And she was still where we could play dominoes together and that kind of thing. So I spent all day with her, and I felt that was my ministry. And I had no hesitation about it, and I wouldn't go anywhere. I would only preach on Sundays if I could teach a Bible class, preach, and then go be with Mother all afternoon and come back and preach at night, So it was great, and I got to be with her, a year and a half, literally, before she passed away in April. So now I teach the Wednesday night auditorium class here. I fill in pulpits around in the area. A lot of these congregations around here don't have anyone to help with counseling and premarital counseling and this kind of thing, and so I've done a whole lot of that already. And so, to be honest, I'm really confused right now, because I thought when you retired you just got to sit in the chair and watch Price is Right and all that stuff, but I have more to do almost than I can shake a stick at, which that's great. I don't want to be sitting down. I want to be productive for the Lord, and I'm just thankful He's letting me do some of these things. I don't know what the future is. If God opened the door for a congregation, I might take that position. But I'm surely not just biding my time now, And I found that a lot of these little churches have big needs, And I'm hoping we just got a new pulpit minister here, fine young man, and I'm hoping I can be a help to him. I have a little bit of desire, as I've always had, to kind of help new preacher. I mean, he's not a brand new one, but he's young enough in this thing that I hope I have some things to share. I don't want to try to take over, but I want to share some of those kind of things,
Well, there is no doubt you do have plenty to offer and to give. In fact, it is, Don, an honor, and I wish I could use some different words to say what it means for you to be sharing this time with us as a conference, and also with me personally and in every way, because you have a common word we use now is mentoring, and we use that, and there was mentoring long before that word was used, and you were doing it, and we sure appreciate and love you.
Well,
go ahead.
Don't hate me when you have to edit this whole thing.
Right. We won't. Is there anything maybe that you would like to say that has nothing to do with any questions that we asked you today?
Oh, I haven't thought of that. Well, this is just a quick one. Because a lot of us who were in youth ministry at first, we're getting older, a whole lot older. And there are some who've really had some tough times physically, especially Wally and ones like that. So don't forget to pray for people like that and go see them, because I don't want Wally to get away from this world without ever a guy who can sitting down with Wally for several hours if he can and just being blessed. You know what I mean? That kind of, Wally's had cancer for 21 years now, plus MS, and oh my. So I'm not talking about just him. There's several youth ministers who've gotten up in years. Of course, we lost Bobby Heiss, and what a tremendous loss and gain. But be sure and you young youth ministers and bless these who've been around. They're not wanting any pampering, or they're not wanting to be patted on the head, or they're not wanting applause. But I'm just saying, be sure and keep them in your prayers, because some of them are really going through some physically difficult times right now. I don't know why that hit me, but that's just so crucial.
Yeah.
I don't know of anything else, especially, but that's all I think of right now.
Oh, that's great. I want to tell you again, we honor you, love you,
Well, thank
appreciate
you,
you
brother.
for all that who you are now, and for the way that you paved through the years. And
Thank you.
you just mean a tremendous amount to so many of us throughout
Yeah.
across the board.
Yeah. Well, I didn't talk. Oh, go ahead.